Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So as you can tell by the title, we'll be talking about this very large, significant winter storm. It's a massive one that has occurred partially, and I think though the worst part of the storm is still yet to come. Or maybe not for your specific area, because you could be watching this from anywhere in the United States, but overall as an impactful event for the most amount of people, this second wave will be the worst, and it's already well underway across Oklahoma, Texas, and this is the first area. So I'll do first a brief little recap on the first wave of the system, and then I'll start obviously talking about that second wave, and then that will pretty much be it. I don't think I'll be recording a video tomorrow late at, in the evening, because this thing will be mainly wrapped up. And I do want to say that if you do like the winter weather, enjoy it while it's occurring in your area. Hopefully you are getting it, not rain. And if you don't like it, there is also good news on the horizon, as we're expecting a good period of calmer weather. No big storms, maybe some smaller systems. So, let's start talking about this. I do want to say that if you are new to this channel, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Watch the video. Obviously, if you do enjoy it, consider liking and subscribing. I'm just saying this now. I know you haven't made your opinion yet, but I always forget at the end, so I'm just there to let you know. And if you have any comments, put them down below. I'll do my best to answer them, but yesterday I didn't really answer any because I found myself pretty busy, but I'll try answering them today. But I read over them, but answering takes a lot more time. So let's start off with the radar. Let me just play this back. The last 6 hours, which this is what the radar does. In the last 6 hours, this is how it looked like. I wish I could go back further, but this one only goes back 6 hours. Regardless, I just want to show you how this system performed. Notice the main, I guess, area that was a bit of a shocker, if you will. Not really a shocker, but just a bit the disappointment was maybe the Detroit area. Notice how there's a lot of dry air here struggling to make it in, and therefore the city really didn't even pick up any those significant amounts that they were supposed to, as you could see a lot of dry air to the south, to the west, northern Indianapolis here. It's been pretty accurate thus far, and you may be just transitioning to some snow across Indy and whatnot, but the worst of the storm is still yet to come. Same with St. Louis and central Illinois. Notice it's starting to snow, I'm assuming in Toronto, but again, based off the radar that yesterday I saw in my area, it showed snow on the radar, but it wasn't actually reaching the ground. Quite a bit of dry air fighting the surface of the system here, so the radar can be pretty deceptive. Do note that New Mexico also is dealing with some snow, and then of course this is the second wave, which I'll be talking about. But let's go over how much snow it dropped. So I showed you the radar. Again, some of these amounts right here are from that second wave. You could see, starting to develop across the mountains. Well, it's pretty much done with the mountains at this point, at least in Colorado. Dropped decent amounts. I don't know exactly how much Denver got. I could assume it wasn't okay, so it actually was pretty good amounts. I thought those amounts were more in the mountains. Well, that's a decent snowstorm. You guys haven't had a lot of snow this year, I don't think, for the Colorado area. So that's at least on the front range of the Rockies here. So that's a pretty good system. Do note that across these areas, obviously varying. I mean, you go from 10 inches right there, probably a higher elevated area, to a lot lower in those. Santa Fe around an inch, too, at least from that snowfall report. Amarillo got around 1 to 2 inches. Wichita at around 6. So pretty good event for you guys. Topeka around 4 to 5. And again, it's still going to be snowing here a bit and adding on to some of these snowfall totals, especially for cities like St. Louis and areas north, Springfield. We did get amounts that were high. Look at that, 14.5 inches. Macomb. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, even though I have seen that area before on the radar, and just it's all one thing to just think how you pronounce that word and then try pronouncing it. But notice that 14.5 inches, whoever that reported, that snowfall report, I guess they had the highest amount. So that's it. But there were a lot of amounts that were very close. Do note central Illinois, Canton, for example, 12 inches. You're still going to pick up some additional snow, though it probably won't be 12 inches. But again, that's why, if you do have a 12-inch amount right now, you see around 6 inches more. You could get amounts close to 20. Notice Chicago area, quite a big drop off to the north. That was as expected, and areas in Indiana, you can see right there, Akron, probably Akron, Indiana is around 12 inches, but right there, I mean, literally the difference is tiny, but look, 5.5 to 12 inches, so it's quite a bit of this scattered, or I guess snowfall totals, or they're just a bit isolated, the lighter and heavier ones, so it makes it honestly really tough to predict, because some people think it underperformed, as you saw, 5 inches, some thought it did just as forecasted to, so it's a difficult situation. Regardless, let's take a look at the radar. So, sorry, not the radar, the future radar. So this is a model that came out at 3 o'clock. It's 7 o'clock, so it's a few hours old. You're going to notice a lot of this has moved away since. That snow that it shows across Indiana and Michigan. And let's bring it up to standard time, which is for it was a few hours in the future. Let's go back here, not get too excited there. This is what we are at right now. Notice it does a pretty good job with the system. Again, a little bit of more than expected drier across say Detroit and into southern Canada. It's not snowing as well as they thought. And now let's start pushing this forward. Notice that it did a pretty good job with the snow side across Oklahoma, though there isn't as much maybe into Texas as what this model shows, or into Missouri. Regardless, it's a pretty good interpretation. And let's bring this forward. So notice while this one kind of dies back slowly, the second one reinvigorates the remnants of it and then reinvigorates itself. It's very strong, and this is why I think it will be the worst part, because a lot of areas will get impacted by the snow. You know, a lot of areas did get impacted by that first wave, but this one will also have a icy side that is much more significant. And notice, I mean, just an explosion of precip occurs across Indiana, Illinois, and this is at around 12 a.m. So if you're going out today midnight, you know, for whatever reason, it's going to be pretty icy. Say across Texas, anywhere you see that pink, if you know your location on the state, I won't be able to help you if you don't know where your city's situated on this map, but look at that and see that at 1 a.m. If it's showing ice here, it may not be exactly ice, because there is some chance of this being incorrect, but most likely it's going to be either rain or ice. It's going to be a wintry mess again, and that purple is sleet, that pink is freezing rain. It'll be kind of alternating between those two, though it does seem that the sleet may be rather minimal compared to the freezing rain in terms of the threat, and sleet is also just much more safe. And do note that this thing continues for a while, right? I mean, look at Indianapolis. It starts getting on its snowfall probably at around 11:10 today, or maybe actually earlier from that first wave. You could see getting in on that clip of that snow. That's very possible. And notice that this thing continues for hours, and you can see it's still snowing across southeastern Oklahoma across 7 a.m. Potentially some snow streaming into Dallas. Not a lot, depending on how quick this kind of moisture gets whipped out of here. If there's a bit more snow on the backside, you will get a bit, probably not enough to accumulate anything significant, but you'll see flakes falling. That's most likely a certainty. Notice Little Rock gets in from rain into ice, and then maybe into some snow, and then you can see Cleveland, Detroit gets in on some snow again. How far north that band goes, that rain snow or that snow line fighting with the dry air, it's tough. It's a tough call, but notice this thing does eventually stream into the northeast and even drops a little bit of snow for, say, southern Ohio. You can see right there at the back end. And yes, at this point, this is early Friday morning, and a lot of the northeastern cities either rain or ice, nothing too extraordinary. Again, let's take a look at some of this total snowfall. There may be some, differences between what actually may happen, but do note that they're showing, if you live across northern Indiana, right, and let's zoom in on this, and you saw, let's see how much you saw, location on the snowfall map right here. Let's pick a location that saw a good amount of snow to kind of prove my point. There were quite a bit of locations. Again, this is such a weird event. I haven't seen this in a while, where it's just a lot of amounts mixed in that are of 7, 8, 12 even, and then we have some amounts that are just 4, 5, 3. A lot of smaller and higher amounts. Generally, though, I would assume if these are correct, the lower amounts, right, underperformed in certain areas, overperformed in others. It's just a very weird event. I'm not gonna lie. It was obviously a big one, and one that we knew was going to be interesting, but in this sense, it's definitely definitely weird. Regardless, if you saw even say 6 inches, you may get an additional, what does that say, 10, 11. You could still end up with 16 inches, and that's a pretty good event. Again, and if you had 12 inches, a foot of snow, you get 10 inches, you could get well over 20 inches, right? So that threat for that 20 inches is still there. You could see Detroit still, if you haven't seen any, you could still pick up 6, 7, 8 inches. You should be satisfied with that, hopefully. Notice Columbus, right, 6 inches. Again, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, which will be pretty accurate, though for some of these northern locations it may be a bit too low, so you can multiply this by 1.3, 1.2, so that would be 12 inches instead. And notice that this is the central United States, right? So St. Louis, you're kind of on the lower end of seeing that snowfall, or sorry, on that northern side of it. Oklahoma City, if you already see 2 inches, you could see an additional several more. And again, I think a lot of the snow is going to be falling pretty heavily, and as just based off the radar, it is actually very, very, very impressive. So let me show you now another model, but actually before I do that, I want to show you the Northeast, because I didn't show you that. And notice that across Vermont, New Hampshire, New York, these areas are going to be seeing probably, again, pretty good amounts. This is probably a bit lower than you may see, because this assumes a 10-to-1 ratio. Notice cities like Toronto, you're right on the cusp, right? Some of these models show you getting a lot, some of them a bit less. This is probably around 15 centimeters. Earlier it was thought that it could have been a bit higher, so there's been a slight southern trend with this, if you will, the snow. But let me show you another model called the RAP, a very good similar model to what I just showed you, but it has different kind of data and whatnot. So if they agree, these two, then that means that there's probably a good sign of that what they show is going to happen. And let's see if they do agree on anything. Sorry about that. But notice that they show that first wave petering out. They show that second wave exploding again. Ice, snow, rain, all of that stuff moving in. Again, notice cities like Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, all of those cities are right on the cusp of that northern gradient of seeing some, more significant or non-significant snow. We'll have to see whether or not that unfolds the way they think it will. But regardless, you can see this thing does eventually get through. And by Friday, early in the morning, this thing is done and over with. And let's take a look at some of these total snowfalls now with a more estimated Kuchera. So again, additional snowfall you could see for Oklahoma. This one shows 8-10 inches, which is quite a bit. Indianapolis, maybe up to a foot still. You can see into portions of Ohio, here in New York, over 1.5 feet, even getting to, again, some amounts in the 15 to 20 inch range, if not over 2 feet. Cities like Toronto, the southern areas, maybe even the kind of areas bordering, I guess, the United States could see, or Lake Erie right by the shore could see, 14 inches, which is close to 30 centimeters. Areas further north, really could see a lot less. And just to show you those folks that kind of may not understand why there's such a tight gradient or how that looks like, I'll show you the city of Chicago. So this is my area. Notice a lot of these areas here got a decent snowfall, 4 to 5 inches, but then this isn't a big distance. You have 11, 12, right? So this is still the same city, and you have, double that amount easily. So these gradients are rather impressive. And I think this is the same reason why there was that gradient to some of these areas that just got way less. Maybe a little pockets of dry air were harder to overcome. And, you can see Peoria here where it did snow. It snowed a lot. It's 12, 13 inches. So I do think that overall, though, this heavy snow band did go a bit further towards the north than anticipated, at least in portions of Michigan and what's not. And I do notice that... Look, right there we have a ton of snow, 12 inches Peoria. Come on, let's load. And then the Quad Cities right over here. Sorry about that. It could be up to, less than an inch, or that's how much it rained or snowed. So, these amounts can vary for quite a big distance. So, assuming that the weather model, even if it's right, the environmental factors may throw a curveball. So let's take a look at what the National Weather Service shows. You could see that a lot of the warnings are still up. Last time I saw a map so pink, I don't actually remember. It's been a while. But notice in terms of overall snow forecast, for the Detroit area, you could still see additional 8 to 12 inches. That was issued today in the morning, so probably a bit less now. And notice Ohio, right? These areas, this is how much snow you can expect. 8 to 12, again, pretty good event. Maybe even some higher amounts again than that. As you saw with it throws curveballs. You can see Oklahoma City right now. You're definitely getting a lot of this, and they have upped some of those snowfall totals towards Tulsa of 6 to 8, even higher amounts of snow. And notice they do have ice storm warnings, which is probably the biggest concern. You can see Paducah, Kentucky, seeing some ice. Let's see what this ice storm warning calls for. Probably some pretty intense areas of ice. Yeah, look at that. Total snow up to 2 inches, but this is really the concerning. 3/10 to 3/4 of an inch. That's enough to bring down power lines, trees, and especially just cause pretty much impossible travel. And you can see that for snowfall forecasts, the area calls for 8 to 12 additional inches for St. Louis, however much snow they got. Mount Vernon 4 to 6. Again, I'm not going to go over every single city, but I'm just going over some of the bigger areas. Little Rock, this is most of Arkansas. Let's take a look at that forecast, the sleet and snow. You can see pretty good amounts up here, especially towards the north and west. Those are some very high amounts. Little Rock, not as much. Potentially a bit more if that ice transitions earlier, a lot less if it doesn't. A lot of Texas under winter storm warnings. You could see in terms of ice, again, potentially crippling amounts of ice, especially because of the fact that this is further towards the south. Infrastructure is just not meant to handle such potentially high amounts of ice. So, and honestly, even if that fell across cities that do, that's just inarguably a high amount of ice. Snowfall, decent. This is most likely what's going to happen. If it does end up overperforming, you could get amounts that are closer to this, and you can see they have that. So that's definitely something to watch for. Notice that there's winter weather advisories as far south as San Antonio, right? But a lot of these areas, let's just click on the city. It's just the threat for it. Really, again, this ice is that's basically a glaze of ice and little to no sleet accumulation, so nothing too extraordinary. But again, it's because it's ice, they issue a winter weather advisory, because even a little bit of ice can cause traffic or travel headaches. So if you go towards the northeast, Erie, I already showed you this location, 8 to 12 inches. Towards the northeast, Vermont, New Hampshire, these amounts, snow starts getting fluffier, so you can see higher amounts, again, well over a foot. So yes, this thing is definitely a big event, and we'll just have to keep an eye on for this. And let me now just show you a few more models like that NAM 12KM across the United States. But let me go on this website, because this one does a better job of showing just the snow, not the ice and sleet and everything else. Do note that, again, the track is pretty solidified. It probably won't change by a lot. This is how much snow the NAM thinks will be falling. You can see pretty good amounts here. It even shows over a foot across Indianapolis. That maybe a bit just north of the city, but that's a bit high. But we'll see if that does occur or doesn't. Notice Ohio into Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine picking up potentially close to a foot, if not more, across some of these locations. Another model that's very similar to the NAM, but you can see it has its differences. It shows a bit more amounts of snow into Oklahoma, potentially City, St. Louis. Indianapolis shows that snow a bit further towards the south. Cleveland area right there, and into the northeast, a bit higher amounts. And yeah, those are basically the main models I wanted to show you. I could show you the European, the big global ones, but again, at this point, they're kind of useless. They're just, there to solidify the track or what's not here. But you can see there's what the European thinks. I think that's a pretty good estimate of what may happen. Here's the GFS. See some differences. And that's actually the new model one. Let's go to the most recent one. Yep, you can see right there. Pretty similar to what the European shows. Canadian, they all did a pretty good job with this system in terms of track. We can see there are some slight differences, so just find your location and see whether or not it's a bit more or less for you. And then this is the UK model. This one probably did the poorest, and yeah, a lot of the snow here won't be happening to that extent. There won't be 11 inches across southern Arkansas. That's just not happening with this event. So yeah, that's basically it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll probably, this is my last video about this winter storm, but this one is definitely an interesting one. It was a massive one. And you can see that there's also a rain threat that I didn't go over. But if you live across the south, there's quite a bit of rain here, and they do have not a flash flood watch, but a flood watch. So potentially flash flood warnings and watches may be issued, but several inches of rain may be occurring, especially since these areas, I'm assuming, aren't completely dry and already have decent moisture in the soil. I don't know, maybe actually a lot more than I think. But also do note how they have winter storm warnings and then nothing, right? It's just a quick drop off because, again, those gradients are tough to forecast with, and this is what made this storm kind of challenging. Regardless, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya.